believe that's on. We're good? All right. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee of Tuesday, January 18th at 5:30 p.m. Having done that, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I do. I move to approve the minutes from the meeting of December 20th with one modification. On the first page, in the second paragraph, where it identifies those in attendance, it mistakenly says Councilor John Emanuel, and that should say Councilor Pankaj Prakash. So with that modification, I move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes pass. Are there any public comments coming from the, maybe a Zoom link or outside link? There are no public comments in the chamber. Seeing none, no public comment. We'll move on to departmental reports, and we will start with fire.
Okay, thank you, Ed. You have our monthly report in front of you, which has our also year-to-date totals, which are the year-end totals. I'll put it together in a more formal document and send it up through channels. The calls are up. There was 744 for the year. Out of those 744, 690 were incident responses. So the rest were just call for services that didn't require the whole fire department. Mr. Chairman, we talked about this last month. We still haven't found out how those are getting in there through the computer program. Mm-hmm. And we are working on that, looking into that. Staffing remains fairly constant. 15 down at Station 1, 20 at Station 2, 16 at 3, 6 in the fire police, 12 in the staff, and 2 cadets, bringing us to 71. 64 of those are active. We have several on different types of leave. FMLAs, we have 1 member in the military on active duty, 2 administrative leaves, and we had one of our members is on an educational leave. We put on no new members in December. We put on 11 total during the year. With that said, I want to point out that we sized 5 members for new gear, and we have 2 gear orders on order. But the lead time with the supply chain issues is now 6 to 8 months. So we're going to see it when we see it. Mm-hmm. I wish I had better answers than that. Some of our outreach was December 4th. We did Stuff a Truck with the other public safety agencies. December 18th, we did Wreaths Across America up at the Colonel Gates Cemetery. December 24th, we assisted with meal deliveries to community members, and that was with the town human services. We recorded 202 training hours, and we're at about 84% complete vaccinated members, and of that, it says 29, but today's numbers are 31% of the members have had the additional booster shot. That's all in the report, and I'd just like to add a couple things, and starting with COVID response. Since our last public safety meeting, the fire department had to address COVID, and at one point, we had 11 members out with another 23 on a watch list due to exposures. We looked at our options. We got a little creative with our solution. And what we did was reduce the apparatus crew counts from 6 to 4, give ourselves more spacing in the trucks. But then we supplemented those 2 by rolling a utility truck directly behind that assigned asset. We also reduced the likelihood of transmission by replacing in-person training with online training. And these actions have reduced our exposures, and we currently have only 4 members out with no one on the watch list. So our plan is working. We're going to continue to monitor and reevaluate and make the appropriate notifications or modifications as needed. One of the other subjects I'd like to talk about real quick is daytime incident response. I did talk about our membership numbers earlier with 71 on the roster and 64 active. But I'm starting to become very concerned with the availability of personnel during daytime hours. Most calls during the day and for daytime, I'm considering that 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. We only see about 6 members attending. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but an average of 6. And if you consider a command car and apparatus officers, or I'm sorry, apparatus operators, that doesn't leave us a lot of personnel to mitigate the incident. I believe this is due to the abundance of good jobs out there in the community. A lot more of our people are working. This time last year, when COVID was really at its height, we had a ton of people working from home. We had a lot more help in the daytime. I've discussed this with the town manager, extremely helpful, and we've taken some internal measures, but we're still seeing only about 6. And I just want you to know this is not just a Rocky Hill issue, it's a regional issue. Talked to a lot of other departments around. You can see we've been using the media, and by we I mean the fire service. Rocky Hill was interviewed on Channel 8 2 weeks ago. Cromwell got Channel 3. I want to say Simsbury was out on 3 or 30, so we're all trying to get the message out to get more members. But relying on your neighboring departments isn't really a viable option at this point. And several other departments have gone to per diem, bringing on a couple people during the day. And hopefully if this doesn't get any better, with that said, we may need to look at per diem assistance in the not too distant future. So I just wanted to bring that up and put it on everybody's radar screen. And 2 other things real quick. As you are probably well aware, we had a serious structure fire on December 27th at 11 Glastonbury Avenue, which was a 4-family apartment building, resulting in 1 civilian injury, no first responder injuries. And upon arrival, we had a 2-story apartment building with just a lot of fire, heavy fire in the rear of the structure. I'm just going to hit the highlights. We committed all our Rocky Hill resources to this call, and we brought in the Task Force 51, which comprised of Cromwell, Berlin, Weathersfield, and Newington assets. We actually used Newington and Weathersfield on the scene and kept Cromwell and Berlin behind to cover the town. Eversource and CNG were quite helpful, as well as the Department of Environmental and Emergency Protection. I believe, I might not have that right, DEP. They were requested. We were so close to the river, we knew we were going to have runoff going down there. So we brought them in to assist with us. The building suffered considerable damage, and the families suffered considerable loss of belongings. With that, I do want to say that I thought it was a successful operation in terms that when we got there, the heat was so great, the siding was melting off of, I believe it's Harvey's Academy of Gymnastics. For us old townies, it used to be the Grange Hall. The siding was melting off that at that point. So that building is standing, and the only damage to that is to the siding as well as the garage to the rear. What we did find helpful, and it turned me into a believer, was we used an unmanned aerial drone to check for roof integrity and hot spots using its thermal imaging camera. I believe that the fire operations on that building took the majority of 8 hours before all assets were brought back on the line. A lot of hose to clean, repacking, and so forth. A lot of gear to wash and get the contaminants off the personal protective equipment. The last thing I did want to bring up is the fire department has entered into a partnership with OSHA to proactively review our policies, procedures, and facilities. We had our first meeting last week. We scheduled 2 hours, and we wrapped up at 6. We looked at training, we looked at air management, respiratory protection, health and safety, and maintenance records. There were a few recommendations, and we haven't received them in writing. We had a verbal exit conference. We're not going to take any action until we do see them in writing. And when we do have that, we'll have, depending on the recommendation, 30 to 45 days to implement, and then they'll come back for another round and pick another series of subjects to help us with. So at the end of the day, this is a very large time commitment, but in the end, it's going to make us more efficient and safer. And that's really all I have. A little more than I usually say. So.
Oh, it's good to have a full report without other pressing items or issues taking away from your area. So thank you for that. And I turn to Councilor O'Sullivan for questions.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for that report, Chief. So with respect to coverage during the weekday daytime hours,
Yes, sir.
can you give us a general sense, like on calls for service, the volume level during those hours, say the 7 to 3 Monday through Friday, versus, we'll say, second and third shift and weekends? Does that tend to be high, relatively high intensity, low intensity, average?
That's a great question, which I don't have the exact data for, but I can tell you our overall average is 19 members per call. Our daytime average is 6. So the rest of the time makes up for that delta in there. Last night's calls, we were looking at 24, 28 members to the call. So it's a lot heavier in the after hour. I think that just speaks to Rocky Hill being a true bedroom community.
Okay, so when you say the numbers, that's not driven by, that's driven by the need rather than who's available. In other words, you have 6 because that's the average need versus you could really use 10, but you only have 6.
I may be saying it wrong, Bill, but those 6 are who's available.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody else available during the day.
So let me rephrase my question then. So I'm trying to get so I have a sense that, on what's the manpower that's available to you, that it's diminished during the week. But I'm trying to get an idea, when you look at how the calls for service are spread out in the course of the week, is the daytime hours Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, is that a relatively light demand part of the week, or is it average or heavy?
I think you'll see, and I ran these numbers several weeks ago. Daytime calls are between 40 and 45% of our calls.
Daytime, Monday to Friday?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised then, because so when people are away at work, the kids are at school, the houses are vacant, that would seem to drive call volume down.
Today's been a quiet day. We've got a lot of commercial property in town, so we go to fire alarms there. The highway is always active. Past couple days, water leaks, they don't pick a time of day. So you do see, even though a lot of the houses are vacant, even though we're a bedroom community, during the day, there's still a considerable amount of activity that happens within the town, and we still have calls generated.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Chief, on OSHA,
Yes.
That's OSHA, right? That is the
It's
Occupational
Connecticut
Safety and Health?
OSHA. Connecticut OSHA has, and they explained it to us, Con OSHA has the private workplaces, where Connecticut OSHA has municipalities. That's where you see who's got who.
Okay, and when you say entered into an agreement, has this ever been done in the past?
Yes, a lot
Okay,
of fire departments.
so every
are
now and
doing-
then, it comes up on everybody's calendar, and you make an agreement for them to come through and do?
What will happen is, and this is our first meeting with them on this, on the consultation. We did have a brief consultation several months ago on our hazardous material operations plan. They made a couple comments which we changed while they were in the room. When we do have, what I expect is a written report of findings with the dates, and I would expect after that a reinspection date, and as part of our next meeting, we'll go over a reinspection as well as open up some new topics. And again, the one they mentioned quite a few times last week was respiratory protection. I'm sorry, bloodborne protection. We did respiratory protection.
Sure. And then regarding the report from last meeting on the highway run synopsis,
Yes,
so I think calls were up, but now you're modifying them a little bit because we're pulling out some of the calls that are not calls for actual service, but they're calls for some other reason.
I don't believe that will not affect the highway runs.
Because we were probably up on highway runs
We're about 11.5%, 12%.
of
and
the
that-
total calls,
of
which
total
is
calls.
up, but it's up about 30% over
I would
last year.
use 12% of 690 runs for our rough highway calls.
Sure.
We're in about 11.5, 12%. In total disclosure, I did get a call, and I appreciate you reminding me of it, the other night from our state rep about this subject, and she actually was able to find bills about highway response that were funded for numerous years, but somehow the funding went away under a previous administration. And I believe she's going to be looking into those.
So for Councilor O'Sullivan's benefit, I'm sharing your report.
Absolutely.
And what we're looking at, Bill, is the idea, the notion that when the fire is happy to respond and cover our section of the highway, but it's the relief, right? Can DOT get there with their bumper cars and trucks to secure the site so our trucks can get back into position to service our town?
Yep.
Without undue hours of delay sitting out on the highway waiting for them to come. So we're trying to find an avenue to reach out to the highway department through whoever, our state rep, and maybe we can, get a hotline that's a little more, maybe ask for a quicker turnaround time to get that backup support out there so we can return trucks to equipment and men to the town's safety. So that's what that's all
Yeah,
about.
we discussed that a bit last month, and I think it's, when you look at it from the 30,000-foot view, I find it kind of shocking that it's actually municipal responsibility to deal with accidents on an interstate highway that just happens to run through your town. It's so, I mean, that's potentially great news for the state to step up.
We were, last Thursday night, all three services, police, fire, and EMS, covered the bridges in town to do a memorial for the New Haven police officer who died many years ago and was being brought home to New Haven. No flags, anything like that, just vehicles with their lights on the bridges. It all cleared up. The procession had gone through, and next thing you know is we got a 5-car accident on the highway, and all three services were needed there. And PD had several vehicles down there, and at that point it was needed. We had 4 transported to the hospital, plus 2 minor injuries, several other refusals. It was just a mess on the highway, left-hand lane, high-speed accident. Oh, okay.
I thought you were,
had something for-
you had some-
I thought you had something for me,
No,
Brian.
no, I was agreeing with the numbers.
Yeah.
So I couldn't recall how much info we've gotten to Bill on that, but I
Appreciate
think
it.
we want to look at this going forward and see how we can assist in helping alleviate that stress point. Thank you for the report, Chief Gary. Ambulance. Chief Goodrich.
So for December, we had a total of 404 calls, which brings our year-to-date total up to 4,296 for the whole year for 2021. We had 6 canceled calls, 5 no patient contacts, and 1 we got canceled before we got arrival on scene. We did 13 lift assists for the month, that's just assisting people who can't get off the floor that aren't injured at all. And refusals that we got were 7. We had no opioids for the month. The year-to-date that you were looking for, we had a total of 6 that were classified as opioid. And the cardiac arrests, we had 1 in December, and for the year-to-date for those was 13 for the year. We did 40 hours of training last month for our members. We've had no new members in December, so these are total at 80. We've participated also with the stuff a truck with the other services in town, the police and the fire. We were also at the human services to help for the Christmas Eve for the food that was delivered to the families in town. And let's see here. And we have, that's pretty much the gist of the calls and the stuff that we've done for the month of December.
Counselor O'Sullivan, any questions?
Just the mention of no opioid-related calls, and that's certainly good news. Maybe you're not the right question to pose this question to, but maybe you're the wrong person to pose this question to. The recent incident in Hartford with the overdose, it sparked some conversation about making Narcan, have it kind of stocked and readily available, and people trained in various public sites around towns. I assume that ambulances are routinely outfitted with those.
Yes,
is that the case?
we're fully
Okay.
stocked with multiple doses of Narcan for any kind of incident that would happen. The paramedics also have it on board, and the first responders also coming to the scene also have the Narcan kits.
Okay, thank you.
Chief Goodrich, so your predecessor had an activity he was assisting the departments in getting gear washed or cleaned or sanitized. Are you still performing that function?
We still, our uniforms, we haven't had any, we're all fully gowned up, and pretty much we're all pretty taken care of. But we have our own laundry stuff where if we did have somebody that was contaminated, we can wash their uniforms, and we have extra supplies and stuff down there, depending on the nature of the call. But if it's something with COVID and it's active and it's we're fully gowned, and then we have eye protection masks, the whole kit and caboodle, gloves, obviously. But if it gets on the uniforms, we just pretty much they're protected in our gowns that we're at if we have to use them.
Right. So we're not seeing a shortage of PPE. PPE.
At the moment, we're always looking. We're still looking, but we have a good amount right now. We have our storage area with some, and then obviously the stuff that the town just delegated to us a couple weeks ago. We were able to add that to our stuff that we have.
Yep. And fire is good on PPE in
Yep.
that regard,
Plenty of masks, plenty of gloves, plenty of everything.
and we're still able to cross-share if we get into a pinch.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. However, we don't wear the gowns and so forth that EMS wear. We wear structural firefighting gear, which has a liquid repellent in it, or a liquid barrier in it. And then we have our own washing facilities, as Brian does, and he's welcome to walk down the hall, and we're welcome to walk down the hall if we're full up, so, yeah.
I'm just thinking of masks and shields having to be re-cleaned if you're running low or something. I think at one point we were doing that.
Right. In the beginning, we were doing it because it was so hard to get at first, and it was such an overload. But at the moment, we were able to stock up enough where we have our masks and our shields if we need them. Obviously, shields have come down a lot. That only if there's any kind of aerosol in the air, if they're actually productively coughing or they're giving a breathing treatment where it's in the air, we wear the masks and the shields and everything just to protect ourselves. And all the patients also, we have to, when we bring people to the hospital, we always have to make sure that we give them a mask that they could wear into the hospital because they have to be, to protect everybody else at the hospital. And, when we're walking through the emergency room or everywhere else, they have to be fully masked also.
And you have 80 total members now?
Yep.
And is anybody offline?
We had one that was offline, but she came back as of yesterday.
Cool.
So we're good.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Okay. We move on to police. Chief Custer.
Okay, good evening. For the month of December, we had 3,906 calls in our dispatch center. We had 22 criminal arrests for the month. We investigated 43 motor vehicle accidents, 39 non-injuries, 4 with injuries. Infractions issued for the month were 110, and an additional 279 warnings were issued. We had 5 community service events for the month, and our training hours were 179. So on this chart that I provide you with the monthly stats, the best report is always December because you get a full look at the present year. So if you look at that chart, we now have the full 2021 year-to-date totals in each category, and we can compare that with the year before. And one of the things that jumps out immediately is the difference in calls for service. A 40% increase this year over last year, which just supports, what we've seen and what we've been saying all along, that, things in town are getting busier, and all 3 services, are affected by that. And just to rehash again, all those calls for service in that particular box are fire, police, and EMS. Everything else is police as you go down the line. But I want to remind you that consistently 90% of those calls are police-related, year in and year out. Ambulance runs roughly about 8.5% of those calls a year, and then fire about 1.5% when you put it all together. So it gives you some perspective. I'm pleased with a lot of the categories. The numbers seem to be trending in the right direction. Not all of them. Infractions are up significantly from 2020, as are warnings. So our total number of motor vehicle stops is shot up greatly from 2020. And of course, a lot of that was the COVID restrictions that we had in place, and we've been able to relax them a little bit. Under the major crimes too, you also see a decrease in the motor vehicle thefts from 2020, which was a real hot issue in 2020. We've seen a downward trend, not total elimination, downward trend in the thefts from motor vehicle, in the thefts of motor vehicles. And I think there's a number of factors playing into that, but I think a big piece of it is the increase in police patrols, directed patrols, and the public service announcements, which have been educating our community. Lock your doors, don't leave the valuables. I think it's starting to have somewhat of an effect. So again, there's some additional factors, but I think we're trending in the right direction. So that chart for this month gives you a good kind of overview of comparatives. In terms of staffing, I'm happy to report that as of present, we are fully staffed. And I can't remember how many times I've said that in 19 years, but it's not been often. But the bad news is that's going to change in February 1st, because we do have a retirement coming. But it's been anticipated, and his replacement, we're already working on the background, and everything has gone very smoothly, so we
Fully
plan...
staffed means
41 officers.
41.
Complete complement of dispatchers, administrative staff, and custodian. Doesn't get any better right now. So hopefully we'll be able to stay on top of that going forward. We've been fortunate. We've been able to find quality people and fill our vacancies, and so we're in a good position right now. In terms of COVID, the peak seems to have come and gone for us. At our peak, I believe we had 6 or 7 individuals out. And right now, we have only 1 civilian dispatcher out due to a COVID exposure. So our hope is that maybe the herd immunity has taken effect. We've also taken internal measures to safeguard staff in terms of getting close to each other, turning our training to online, requiring increased PPE on medical calls, so forth. So I think that plays a part as well. But right now, we're in pretty good shape. The rest of what I have is just kind of updates on some initiatives and projects we got going on. A RFP was put out for the LPR camera system, proposed LPR camera system in town. 2 companies did respond to that, and we reviewed them, and 1 company was selected. They have since then sent the town a proposed contract, and we're presently reviewing that. So I should have more to report next month in terms of how that's working out.
That's the license plate reader?
System, camera system,
Yep,
yes,
yep. Pole mounted.
correct. And as an update too, with the Greater Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force, as you know, that was funded basically from September to December 31st. The unit closed out its final week this past 2 weeks ago. And I do have some numbers to go along with that initiative. So basically, it was about 28 officers from the Greater Hartford region on that task force. And it was really only a short period of time. The money had to be spent pretty quick. And we really didn't get up and running up there till mid-late September. But with that said, as of the week of December 26th, the task force had recovered 103 stolen vehicles. They had made 38 stolen vehicle arrests. They recovered 10 firearms. They served 31 warrants. And they initiated arrests for other ancillary charges, total 27 other arrests. So very successful. And what we did notice is the longer they worked together, the better they gelled. And that was also noticed by Hartford Police, that the agencies became very seamless in terms of working as a fluid team, and they got much more effective. So with that said, as we had discussed last month, the Hartford chief had reached out to all the community chiefs participating to gauge interest in who would maybe be interested in continuing on. 3 or 4 agencies have indicated they would be willing to keep officers on full-time. Some other agencies said they wouldn't be able to do it without the funding. And what I've committed our agency to is working with the unit 1 or 2 nights a week, keeping those contacts, keeping that relationship. Again, I found our participation in this task force to be highly beneficial to us. Of course, they're going to handle any case, work with us on any case in Rocky Hill, and we had some incidents with the shots fired, and they responded right away. And I know some of that was in part because of the relationship and the familiarity we have. So I haven't heard back from Hartford, but we did call up there, and apparently what they're doing now is they're just piecing together a memorandum of understanding with the departments that want to continue on. So once we see that and review it, I'll have something more to report next month on that as well. The only other thing, I just wanted to mention, again, we seem to be trending in the right direction with stolen motor vehicles and thefts from motor vehicles, but the thefts of catalytic converters continues to be a real problem. And it's, again, something we're seeing throughout the capital region. And quite frankly, it's difficult to catch these people. Number of agencies, including us, have videos of them basically jumping out of a car, rolling underneath a vehicle, cutting it with a saw, and leaving within 2 minutes or less. And so unless you have somebody there, and even if you do, if they take off in the car, we can't pursue them. But we've tried a number of things to try to deter it. I've talked with other chiefs. We're all doing the same thing without a lot of success because, again, it's difficult. It's considered a property crime, low level in the scheme of things, but not so much for your community. So the Connecticut police chiefs, we have we work with the lobby up at the Capitol, and we're working with legislators for hopefully this upcoming session to come out with new restrictions on these metal scrap yards that just seem to be taking in dozens, and if not hundreds, of these cattle converters at a time, with no questions asked, paying out big money, in some instances up to $600 per catalytic converter. Unless we come down on those people somehow with some regulation, I don't know how we're going to be able to curb this. So hopefully, our lobby will have some success with the legislature this upcoming session, and we can put a dent in that, but that remains to be seen. Other than that, that's all I have for this month.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, thank you for that report, Chief, and I hope you enjoy these 2 weeks of full staffing that you can look forward to.
Right.
So just a couple of things on the motor vehicle side. And the trend line on the motor vehicle theft, it does seem very encouraging. I was looking at the month-by-month numbers. I saw motor vehicle thefts for the year, 32 for the year as in total, but only 10 in the second half of the year, 22 the first half, 10 the second half. So that certainly looks like an encouraging trend line. And of course, the task force's work kicked in during that second half, so that seems promising.
Absolutely.
Do you know offhand, I'm not asking for hard data, but do you know offhand if the other towns in the task force have also seen the kind of reduction we're talking about here?
Absolutely. Through general discussion or monthly regional meeting, the immediate communities around the Hartford area have seen a decrease. Now, a lot of it, again, kudos to the work of the task force, locked up, as I reported, 38 individuals for stealing these cars. And we had an idea all along it was probably a small number that are doing the majority. So they have seemed to put a dent in that. So, we've all benefited from that. So I think it would be beneficial to try to keep that unit going if we can.
Okay. And now, on the flip side, I saw the data on the thefts from motor vehicles. Looked like we were doing really well, compared to previous years. And then we had this big spike in December. Now, you just talked about the thefts of catalytic converters. So is that in that category, thefts from motor vehicles?
Exactly. That's what's driving that.
Okay.
So it seems that people have started to secure their cars, kept valuables out, all the things that we've been preaching the last year and a half. So those complaints have gone down, but now we're getting hit with the catalytic converters. And the bulk of them, these thefts are happening in, our industrial park businesses where there's generally not anybody at nighttime. There's generally nobody there on the weekend. Now we're seeing them gravitate over to the hotels. So again, you got, a large selection of cars to hit. And they've hit a couple in the hotels. We had an incident just recently, this past month. Officer on patrol drove in with his cruise lights, spooked a crew, that jumped into a car with Rhode Island plates and took off. So, I mean, didn't make an arrest, but obviously probably prevented some thefts at the Sheridan that night. So, yeah, it's a tough one to tackle.
And you kind of anticipated some questions I had about the black market for catalytic converters, and you talked about the, the scrap yards. So there's no law requiring them to maintain a registry or anything? I'm trying to analogize it like to pawn shops, for example.
Yes.
It seems like they should have, similar regulations or reporting requirements.
There was nothing until as recently as 2020, and through just this, uproar of thefts, in the last session, they did create some language that makes it somewhat like the pawn shops, but not as stringent, where you have to have ID, for instance. Well, the reality is we can just produce any kind of ID, so they're not checking it too closely, and they're just, they're grabbing them, they're paying for them, and then they're shipping them off to have them melted down and make even more money. So some of the proposed language that's being discussed is, I guess there's a serial number on these things. You have to have proof that this came off a vehicle that you own, for instance. All right, and certainly if you come in with 20 or 30 more, it should raise suspicions. So, I mean, we're looking at some different things that, are going to make it more difficult, hopefully less prestigious for the scrapyards to grab these things, and I think that'll have probably the most effective
That makes sense.
outcome. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, thanks for the update on the task force. I think that definitely you could see over the year that kicking in for sure. So I'm glad we're considering, continuing that continuing that along in the next coming. I guess you're running them in 10-week cycles. They're not annual.
No, I think we're going to look at annual.
Annual.
Yeah.
And we're still taking some calls regarding, so the charts, thank you for the charts, and it's really helpful for us to, from a management point of view, looking at these things. But one of the areas that I think is probably not showing up here is the break and entry, the trespassing into private property and garages, right? Nothing is taken, so it doesn't end up as a theft or a theft from a car, but somebody has somebody on their car coming through and checking their doorknobs and car doors and what have you, which is still unnerving for the general public. But I do think that might be down, but I didn't know if that was weather related and holiday related. I don't know.
Well, I mean, in those instances, some people have gotten to the point where they're not even calling us.
Yeah.
So, they could be occurring. They probably are occurring, and we're not even getting called. We're not tracking those specifically, but you did mention burglaries, and the numbers are amazing for 2021, 2020. Burglaries were down by, I think, 66%.
Yeah, 13 versus 38.
Yeah, and so the first thing that comes to mind is what's driving that, and I think a lot of it is people are staying at home, working at home more. Kids were home, so parents have to be home. So it's kind of discouraged the burglary market. But yeah, I don't have a firm handle on those rattling the door handles in the driveway type calls.
All right. Thank you. Emergency management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, just wanted to start and let everybody know about the upcoming distribution we're going to have this Saturday. We made some finalized plans. We have some test kits that we're going to be receiving. I'm going to be picking those up on Thursday. We also have about 10,000 masks that we're going to hand out. This will probably be the last distribution that we have as we're using up the remaining stock that the state has at the warehouses. We did do two prior. On January 3rd was our first with the test kits. We did 1,500 test kits, and in 97 minutes they were all distributed. The second event on January 8th was for masks. We did 10,000 masks, and that took about 3 hours. We did learn a couple of things in our distribution setup that we were able to correct to eliminate some of the obstacles we ran into. We did have some traffic concerns on the first one, but again, with changing of our distribution center, we were able to correct those issues. As we got into the setups, I want to take a moment and thank all the department heads and their employees. If it were not for their collaborative efforts, we would not have been able to accomplish these. It seems like everyone we do a little bit better, and we have a little bit more help out there in the field. So we've really kind of nailed down the way we're going to do the distribution now. Some of the items that we were working on, unfortunately, got sidelined because we've been doing so many of the distributions, planning, setting up, and as well as having to go and get the material as opposed to the materials being delivered to us. We were able to prioritize and address some of the things such as the weekly emergency update memos regarding COVID, which go out to all the department heads. The new notification system of the town officials. We have a 2-tier system where whenever anything happens, the chiefs are very supportive, get that information over to us, and then I send out a message to the executive staff so that they're aware of what's happening in town. And I think that's been pretty successful over the last couple of weeks. We are going to have some quarterly meetings. We're going to work on the CERT team. We do plan on doing a couple of tabletop exercises, one for the town, one for the police still. We're working on an ALICE program for the summer. We're going to get some certifications for ALICE individuals. Last month, we had 4 weather advisory events. The 7th, we had the snowstorm, that 2 to 3 inch snowstorm that we were supposed to get. But we did do really well, worked close with DPW, ensuring that the roads were clear, checking in with them if there were any needs or anything that we could assist with. We had the severe cold advisories. We actually had 2 of those, January 11th and January 14th. And then we had the just past the 17th, the snow and ice event, which went back and forth. The COVID class changes weekly. As you know, the numbers are going down. And again, I'm sure Mr. Brown will talk a little bit more about that. The 3 local emergencies that we attended, we had the structure fire on Glastonbury Avenue, which emergency management was able to assist with moving all of those residents up to the Hampton Inn. And again, that didn't require moving any of the normal resources, police and fire. Normally, they shuttle those people to where they need to be and assist with human services. So it was kind of nice to be able to take something off their plate for them. We also had a vehicle into a house, which there was concern about the structure. And again, person living in the house, if we needed to put them up, and emergency management went out and just double-checked. They ended up staying with a neighbor. And then, unfortunately, we had a man down off of Franch Street last week, which we were, emergency management was able to assist fire, police, and EMS in getting out to the field. Working with the agencies, I appreciate the open invitation. They've been real good with supporting emergency management, and again, wouldn't have been able to do the distribution centers without all their technical help. So, and that's really all I have.
Councilor O'Sullivan?
No questions.
No questions? Sure. So, on the communication and the networking, Board of Ed is really its own administrative structure, if you will, and I know you work across lines there so that, executive staff, town manager, people can know if there's an issue at our schools, like an active shooter or something. Yeah. You might want to...
Sure, no problem, and thank you for bringing that back up. I've established some good contact with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the facilities manager there. The 3 of us have been, or the 4 of us have been collaboratively working together on communication. Emergency management has been added to their call list, so any notifications that come out through Board of Education, I will be able to get, and again, I will pass them along to the executive staff as needed. And again, with the facilities going forward, we talked about using some of their facilities for sheltering and things of that need. That plan is still in place, and they've been very receptive to helping out and making sure that, that's available as a resource. So we've been working with them on that. So the communication piece has been greatly improved since the start. We're now going to be able to get notifications just as though, we were the first in line on it, so.
And then, are you playing a role, or, so public meetings like a town council meeting or subcommittee meetings or other, are you set, is it being set from you, or how, whether or not we wear masks, or whether or not we're in person, or
Yeah, at this
or
time.
whether or not we're a hybrid meeting with Zoom versus physical?
I'm not making any of
No,
the.
I don't think so, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's more, I think it's on the agenda tonight for some discussion, but no, it wouldn't be emergency management. That would be more from the town manager and from the various committees that want to determine how they want to meet. I think it's more at a committee level right now.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. That being said, we're on to old business. Thank you for your report. We're on to old business. I don't know if it's that old, but an update from Central Connecticut Health District. Charlie Brown, you're on the monitor.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know I'm old, but let's be serious about this here. So right now we're looking at Rocky Hill. Total cases as of the 18th today, 3,296 cases of COVID-19. That's total for the pandemic. 137 total deaths. Just to give you some perspective, within the last 30 days, so this is inclusive of the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, we've had 880 cases of COVID within Rocky Hill. Rocky Hill, just like every town except for one in the state of Connecticut, is currently in the red alert phase. At this point, Rocky Hill has 187 cases per 100,000 over that 2-week rolling average as of last Thursday. Just a reminder that 15 cases per 100,000 got people into the red. So we're over 10 times the amount that they considered to be a high level of alert. Our vaccination for the town has been doing pretty good, especially since the numbers have actually started to go up. So just to roll through some of the numbers for vaccination, for those 5 to 11, we actually have 42.2% that are fully vaccinated. The 12 to 17 group at 68.5%, 18 to 24 at 78.6%, 25 to 44 at 84.5%, 45 to 64 at 78.6%, and our 65 plus who are rock stars at 99.5% fully vaccinated to date. Just a reminder for everybody, as I know COVID fatigue is definitely a real thing, and as we continue through this process and Omicron is actually in the numbers, we're hopeful that the numbers are starting to go down. We're seeing the positivity rate over the past couple days has been lower. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the meteoric rise that Omicron has caused hopefully will be a precipitous decline as well. So I'm optimistic for that fact that we'll see hopefully the numbers go down really quickly. That's what they saw in South Africa. Hopefully it'll be the same thing here. And usually with this type of very infectious virus, that's typical of what we see as a quick burn rate to where it burns through the people that are contagious and then will have a quick decline as well. So you see that very steep peak. The one thing that has concerned me, and we're starting to see the numbers go down, is the number of hospitalizations. We were very close, flirting with 2,000 individuals hospitalized for COVID-19. we've started to see declines in those hospitalizations. And, luckily, we've also seen very little mortality within our 4 towns over the past, few months, even with this rise in cases. So that being said, I stand ready to answer any questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
Mr. Brown, of the 137 COVID-related deaths that you reported for Rocky Hill, can you tell us approximately how many of those were people who lived in nursing homes?
Don't have that information off the top of my head right now. I can find that for you. I know that was a large number at the beginning of this, so there is quite a few that were related to nursing homes within Rocky Hill.
Yeah, that came up last time, and we didn't have a breakdown of the infection this
Yeah.
time around versus facilities versus the general public.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's 187.
Like I said.
It's 187 cases, not
Oh, I said 137.
137. It's
137,
187
yep.
cases.
The fatalities was 187?
Yep.
No, 137 total deaths within Rocky Hill since the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good on questions, Charlie. I appreciate you being here again, and
Just remember, guys,
Oh,
the
you
3
know what?
W's still work. So keep washing your hands, wearing your mask, watching your distance, and if you have not been vaccinated, please do so. We don't want to have to go through another situation like we just went through with the numbers going sky high and through the roof. So vaccination is our best preventive measure.
yeah, Charlie, we don't have, ambulance reported no opioid issues last time and this time, and I think you also were echoing a similar report last time, and you were going to look a little closer, and we just want to monitor that. It was an issue
Yeah.
pre-pandemic that we certainly don't want to see return.
Yeah, it's still an issue. We're going to get our end-of-year report here. I should have it ready for next month for responses within our 4 towns. We've seen quite a bit of work along the Silas Dean and along the Berlin Turnpike. Rocky Hill, I will say, is probably has much less of cases than what we see. The Berlin Turnpike is generally within Newington, Wethersfield, and Rocky Hill. And Berlin, rather, does have the most cases that we deal with. And, aside from that, the number of outreaches and touches that we've had over the last year in trying to prevent those overdoses, I think, is important information. So our staff is actually working on their end-of-year report. So hopefully we'll have that ready for you next time.
Thank you. And with regards to the mental health issue, so again, the council has appropriated some funds, I believe, to our Human Services Department specifically
Good.
for, maybe it's per diem, but mental health resources for
They're
dispatch and patrol, but nothing's
They're
been coming
advertised
together yet.
for those positions now.
They're what?
They're advertising for the positions now.
Chief, they're advertising.
And that's outstanding.
All right. Okay.
Just one question. Charlie,
Yeah.
you got any numbers on how the flu's doing this year?
Yeah, we're seeing definitely more flu cases than what we had last year. Last year, we had a grand total of 1 case. This year, we've been probably up to 23 cases so far. Flu is actually going to be starting to pick up here in the next probably few months traditionally. We see a rise in January, February timeframe. So, hopefully we don't see a large impact from flu, that some of the mitigation measures that we put in place for COVID, help with all respiratory diseases. But, we have definitely seen more flu this year than we did last year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. think we're all set. Any questions from the chiefs? No? Okay, we're good. New business, update from emergency management response. I
think we
think you
touched on
covered everything there, Steve. Yeah,
Yeah, unless there's anything that you want to address.
I don't. John, no?
No, I think we
Yeah, I think
covered
we-
it between a number
yeah.
of reports.
Other? No?
Nothing?
I have no other.
A motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.